Namasmi Vasava Indriyanam Manasa Chasmi Bhutanamasmi Chetana Vedanam Samavedo Asmi Devanamasmi Vasavaha Indriyanam Manaschasmi Bhutanamasmi Chetana. What was synonym? Translation and purport by Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada. Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Vedanam, of all the Vedas. Samvedaha, the Samveda. Asmi, I am. Devanam, of all the demigods. Asmi, I am. Vasavaha, heavenly king. Indriyanam, of all the senses. Manaha, the mind. Cha, also. Asmi, I am. Bhutanam, of all living entities. Asmi, I am. Chetana, the living force. Of all the Vedas, the Samveda, I am. Of all the demigods, I am, heavenly king. Of all the senses, the mind, also I am. Of all living entities, I am the living force. Translation. Of the Vedas, I am the Samveda. Of the demigods, I am Indra. Of the senses, I am the mind. And in living beings, I am the living force, knowledge. Purport. The difference between matter and spirit is that matter has no consciousness, like the living entity. Therefore, this consciousness is supreme and eternal. Consciousness cannot be produced by a combination of matter. Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So Lord Krishna telling here his opulences, and the best and the essence among all is the opulence of the Lord. Like out of Vedas, Samaveda, and among demigods, Indra, the king of demigod, is topmost. Now, among senses, mind is top. So mind is also a sense, because mind is controller of the senses. If mind is uncontrolled, then even if senses are restrained from sense objects, the mind will dwell in them and taste remains. This confirmed in Bhagavad Gita chapter 2 verse 59. Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehina rasvarjam raso apiyasya param drashtva nivartate. The embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment through the taste for sense objects remains, but ceasing such engagements by experiencing a higher taste, he is fixed in consciousness. So positive engagement is needed to curb the mind. When we engage our mind in Krishna consciousness, the mind is controlled and not agitated. After all, mind is Krishna's opulence. And if we use Krishna's opulence in our gratification, then we will never come out of this material pool. Krishna's opulence is for Krishna's service. Although everything belongs to Krishna, including us as living beings, but because of free will, we sometimes misuse our freedom and then suffer the consequences. So the consciousnness needs to be purified. This is the next opulence. Krishna is telling, Bhuta namasmi chetana. Chetana is in living beings, I am the living force, consciousness. So Chetana is the consciousness. As Srila Prabhupada explained that matter has no consciousness like living entity. What is this consciousness? It is the sense of being that I am. But at the moment we have false ego and thinking that I am this body and all the designations and so on. So individuality of spirit soul is consciousness which comes from Krishna. This is also confirmed in chapter 2, verse 12, that Natvaham jatu nasam, Natvam neme janadipaha, na cheva na bhavishyamaha, sarve vayamataha param. Never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. So here, all the individuality of living beings and the Lord is confirmed. So we all are individuals, and but the living beings are the part and parcels of the Lord. So it's conscious. They are conscious. So consciousness is the symptom of the soul, which is spiritual. So, and matter doesn't have that. As Srila Prabhupada said in the last line, that consciousness cannot be produced by a combination of matter. So when people say that the life comes from, or the matter comes from chemical, sorry, the living entity is the product of the combination of chemicals. So it's not true. Life comes from life. That Srila Prabhupada always says that, and there is a book there as well. So yeah, this is the opulences of the Lord that Lord is explaining. So we can see in different things the opulences of the Lord. So that's what I realize. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Thank you, Sanjeev Prabhu, for your nice relation, getting the ball rolling. Thank you, Amrish Prabhu. Thank you, Purna Pragna Devidasi, Mataji, and thank you, Krishna Samapana Krishna Prabhu, for your unconditional support. So, my realization on this verse, Vedanam Samvedvasmi, Devanam Asmi Vasavaha, Indriyanam Manaschashmi, Bhutanam Asmi Chetana. Of the Vedas, I am the Samved. Of the demigods, I am Indra. Of the senses, I am the mind. And in living beings, I am the living force. That is knowledge. Purport: the difference between matter and spirit is the matter has no consciousness like the living entity. Therefore, this consciousness is supreme and eternal. Consciousness cannot be produced by a combination of matter. So when I was preparing for this, and when Krishna is talking about opulences and creation, not creation, actually opulences, he says, I am Indra of the senses, and I am mind, and of the senses, I am the mind. So these two words I was trying to understand. And as Prabhupada has said once, I was listening to a lecture where Prabhupada has said about Bhagavad Gita, and Maharaj has also said many times, Prabhupada said, just like matriculation examination, school living examination, then you enter into a college and then get your graduate, become a graduate, and then postgraduate. So the Bhagavad Gita is just entrance examination for spiritual education. So Bhagavad Gita is basically beginning. That's what Prabhupada is saying here. And we understand that how nicely Krishna actually talks about entire scriptural things in one place. So I was thinking on these 2 points means why Krishna is saying senses, Indra, and then senses, and also living beings. I am living force. And then Prabhupada writes, it is knowledge. So I have got, I wanted to do some research onto this, that why Krishna is saying like this, and how does it relate to Bhagavatam and other scriptures, where same thing is being repeated and expanded. So before I go to Bhagavatam, I also wanted to talk about where Krishna has said in other places also that how he's actually created everything and how he's doing and how he's involved. So the verse, this chapter 9, verse number 10, the translation is, this material nature is working under my direction, O son of Kuti, and it is producing all moving and unmoving beings. By its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. So what I wanted to say that Krishna is not limited to this, but Krishna is giving examples to somebody who can understand that how Krishna is really controlling and what is his situation. And in the purport that how devotees actually understand it, we have to be a devotee or somebody who has faith in Krishna, then also they can understand. Otherwise, just cannot go into the heads. A very nice example Prabhupada writes about when there is a fragrant flower before someone, the fragrance is touched by the smelling power of the person. Yet the smelling and the flower are detached from one another. There is similar connection between the material world and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Actually, he has nothing to do with this material world, but he creates by his glands and organs. In summary, material nature without the superintendence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot do anything. Yet the Supreme Personality is detached from all material activities. So this is the relationship, and only a devotee can understand that how Krishna is controlling, how Krishna is relating, and how the entire thing works, and how Krishna is actually, it's not only these things, there are other things. In fact, everything has been created by Krishna. So these two words were, I was focusing on, not two, actually three. The Indra, the senses, that's mind, and living beings. I am the living force of knowledge. So when Lord Kapil is talking about creation, and he's telling his mother that how creation actually come into existence through a Sankhya philosophy, where he's giving step-by-step information, what happens after what. And it is very interestingly, I found that what Krishna is saying, same way Lord Kapil is also saying, and where he's talking about the how when the mind was created, and after that all the senses were created. The mind which talks about this. So and we all know that mind is okay. So I'll quickly read that translation. It is Canto 3, chapter 26, verse number 27. That from the false ego of goodness, another transformation takes place. From this evolves the mind, whose thoughts and reflections give rise to desire. So that's how the mind is created, and what the mind actually consists of, or the constituents of. And before that, in 26, it talks about false ego. And then Lord Kapil is talking about that who is actually in charge of mind and what he is. So in the next verse, he said, the mind of the living entity is known by the name of Lord Aniruddha, the supreme ruler of the senses. He possesses a bluish black form resembling a lotus flower growing in the autumn. He's found slowly by the yogis. So that is the mind, and that mind is created step by step. And very interestingly, it is created before intelligence. I don't know, I have no idea how, but it talks about this in the same sequence. So that's mind. And when further down in the same chapter, Lord Kapil is talking about senses, that how senses were, not how senses, what time senses were created, and who is in charge of those senses, demigods. And so that is, I'll quickly read that translation. That is Canto 3, chapter 26, verse 55, where actually Lord Kapil is giving information about the creation of each and every sense and the presiding deity, step by step. So it's very interesting that Krishna is giving in very nutshell some information which is very nicely elaborated, and then Prabhupada very nicely write the purports so that people like me can actually meditate onto this. I cannot understand this. So in this verse, Lord Kapil is saying, in the wake of the olfactory sense came the wind god, who presides over the sense. Thereafter, a pair of eyes appeared in the universal form, and in that the sense of sight. In them, the sense of sight. In the wake of this sense came the sun god, who is presiding over it. Next, there appeared in him a pair of ears, and in them the auditory senses, and in its wake of Dig Devatas, or the deities who preside over the direction. So this way, Lord Kapil is giving the information about all the senses, and that at what level and after what is actually created. And Prabhupada then gives example very nicely in the purport about this creation. The appearance of different bodily parts of the Lord's universal form and the appearance of the presiding deities of those bodily parts is being described as in the womb of a mother, a child gradually grows different bodily parts. So in the universal womb, the universal form of the Lord gives rise to the creation of the various paraphernalia. The senses appear, and over each of them there is a presiding deity. It is corroborated by this statement of Srimad Bhāgavatam and also by Brahma Samhita that sun appeared after the appearance of the eyes of the universal form of the Lord. So this is Krishna is very nicely covering Bhagavad Gita in one verse when he's talking about his opulence, and there are more to come. So this is about demigods and the mind also. And now I just quickly want to share my realization on this living force. Living force in the verse is said Chetana. Chetana, the living force, but Prabhupada writes here living force as knowledge. This is very interesting because in the purport, Prabhupada writes the difference between matter and spirit is the matter has no consciousness like the living entities, and therefore this consciousness is supreme and eternal. So that is living entity, supreme and eternal. And now this entire Chaitanya Charitamrita is basically, this is my realization, and I can be wrong, is all about when Prabhupada writes in the introduction, when he's introducing Chaitanya Charitamrita, he talks about this Chetana and Chaitanya, how those words are related, and how actually that becomes realizing of this Chetana becomes knowledge, and knowledge about the difference between material things and spiritual things. So there are a few lines which I would like to read because I want to read those Prabhupada's sentences, not my own. So in the beginning of the introduction, Prabhupada says, the word Chaitanya means living force. So this is Chaitanya and that's Chetana. But both Prabhupada is translating living force, but in different context. And Prabhupada further writes, as living entities, we can move, but a table cannot because it does not possess living force. Movement and activity may be considered signs or symptoms of the living force. Indeed, it may be said that there can be no activity without the living force, although the living force is present in the material condition. It is not Amrita, immortal. The words Chaitanya Charitamrita then may be translated as the character of the living force in immortality. So this is the entire character of living force is Chaitanya Charitamrita. And then briefly Prabhupada writes about this quality. And further in the same introduction, he gives a different definition of this word Chaitanya Charitamrita, which I'll probably find trying to read. So Prabhupada writes here, but how is this living force displayed in immortality? It is not displayed by men or any other creature in this material universe. For none of us are immortal in these bodies. We possess the living force. We perform activities and we are immortal by our nature and constitution. But the material condition into which we have been put does not allow our immortality to be displayed. It is stated in the Katha Upanishad that eternality and the living force belong both to ourselves and God. Although this is true in that both God and ourselves are immortal, there is a difference. So this Prabhupada is very nicely describing the difference. And further, he actually writing about the relationship between this also. And the other definition he's giving about this Chaitanya Charitamrita is Lord Chaitanya's mission was to teach the path of Krishna consciousness to all men and thereby enable them to partake the immortality of spiritual life. From the Chaitanya Charitamrita, we learn how Lord Chaitanya taught people to become immortal. And thus the title may be properly translated as the immortal character of the living force. The Supreme Living Force is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's what Krishna is saying in 10:22. So this is what I wanted to share with all of you today. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Thank you, Sanjay Prabhu and Avinash Prabhu, for your very nice realizations. And thank you, Amrish Prabhu, for organizing these programs and giving us opportunity to share our realizations. So I'm not going to actually talk on all the points. I just wanted to share a couple of points that I realized. And thank you, Avinash Prabhu, for sharing the information on the senses. That was new information for me, how they were created and their presiding deities. So that is very good to hear. So I was meditating on point of actually the Krishna being actually the master of senses, so all the material senses that we have. So mind is actually considered to be the master. So he's actually controlling all our material senses, the sense of smell, sense of sight, tongue, and etc. So actually I was reading the Melo, and Krishna is called Rishikesha, is a master of all the senses. So we should be using the senses in Krishna's service. So I was just reading the Melo shared by Amrish Prabhu today, that Maharaj actually said that we must use our material senses into service of Krishna, and if we use it in his service, so that's what actually they are meant for. Then Krishna actually extend his lifespan. So that was very interesting point. I was thinking about on those points that we do have senses, but currently mostly we use it to actually satisfy ourselves. But actually Krishna has actually given us this material body and the senses as well. And as we are also, as a spirit soul, we are part and parcel of Krishna and we are eternal servant, but we are not acting accordingly. So as Guru Maharaj instructed, we must use all of our senses in Krishna's service. And that is also the instruction given, that the 9 processes of bhakti. So we should be actually engaging all our senses, serving Krishna, and that way we can actually extend the lifespan of our senses, and that will also help us to actually achieve the ultimate goal of becoming a devotee. So that was very nice realization by Guru Maharaj, and because I don't think like that, but Guru Maharaj actually, whenever I read his melos, actually it just gives me a different angle, how actually things work, even the material things, Guru Maharaj is actually focusing everything that we have, how that can be actually used in Krishna's service. The second point actually I was meditating is that actually Krishna says he's a Samved among the Vedas, he's a Samved. So I was actually trying to find out why, he's saying he's only Samved, why not other Vedas? Means I don't have much information about rest of the Vedas, but I was looking for it, and further in this chapter, I think it's chapter 10, verse 35, Srila Prabhupada has actually given a very nice purport on that, where it is said, Brahat Sam Tatha Samnam Gayatri Chandasam Aham Manasam Marga Shirsho Aham Ritunam Kusuma Karaha. So of the hymns in the Samved, I am the Brihat Sam, and of poetry, I am the Gayatri. So that was actually part of the translation, and Srila Prabhupada further explained that he said that he's a Samved. The Samved is rich with beautiful songs played by the various demigods. One of these songs is the Brihat Sam, which has an exquisite melody and is sung at midnight. In Sanskrit, there are definite rules that regulate poetry. Rhyme and meter are not written whimsically, as in much modern poetry. Among the regulated poetry, the Gayatri Mantra, which is chanted by the duly qualified Brahmanas, is the most prominent. The Gayatri Mantra is mentioned in Srimad Bhāgavatam because Gayatri Mantra is especially meant for God realization. It represents the Supreme Lord. This mantra is meant for spiritually advanced people. And when one attains the success in chanting it, he can enter into the transcendental position of the Lord. One must first acquire the qualities of the perfectly situated person, the qualities of goodness according to the laws of material nature, in order to chant Gayatri Mantra. The Gayatri Mantra is very important in Vedic civilization and is considered to be the sound incarnation of Brahman. Brahma is its initiator and it is passed down from him in disciplic succession. So actually that answered my inquisitiveness about why Krishna is calling himself a Samved, and there is a little bit information also given by Srila Prabhupada. So I just wanted to share that point. Thank you, Mrishbu. Hare Krishna.
Nobody else wants to speak, Mataji's? Okay, Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, dear devotees, for your very nice realizations. It was very nice, Avinash, to listen to your realizations on Chaitanya, consciousness, being conscious. And Srila Prabhupada writes in 3 sentences in the purport, saying that the difference between matter and spirit is this only, that matter is dead. And spirit is the one which gives Chaitanya, consciousness. So basically in here, the translation, probably it should have been living force, should not have been knowledge, would have been Chaitanya, which is consciousness, maybe one of the errors, grammatical errors there. So also Samaved, reference given by Shita Prabhu on this too, which is very nice. He could link the two. And the same way, in the same way, there are many commentaries given by big Vaishnava acharyas. And all of them refer to this too, where of different sampradayas or Vaishnava sampradayas. Where this particular Brihad Sam is a special song. The Samaved basically is the song meter. They are sung in beautiful meters, authentic meters of Rig Veda. So when the Brihad Sam importance is that it's beautifully sung during the Manvantara. Manvantara means the reign of Manu, by the name of Dharmasetu. Dharmasetu was then Lord Indra. When Krishna appeared as Lord Indra. So that is where the Dharmasetu is the incarnation of the Lord. That is how he came as Lord Indra. So for his glorification, this particular mantra was spoken and the meter was given. This is also narrated by all the different sampradayas. So same way, demigod on Indra, I think we have discussed that point too, where Indra is a very important position, demigod. Although he can be puffed up, he can be troublesome also. But at the same time, his position is very important, And as we saw in the 8th canto of Srimad Bhāgavatam, with Bali Maharaj, that as soon as Bali Maharaj was asked to go to the hellish planet, Krishna immediately smiled and started to appease Indra. So that's how the importance of Indra is. Where if there is no Indra, then Krishna himself comes Indra. Because if there is no Brahma, qualified person, eligible, then Lord Krishna appears as Brahma. And Brahma is the first Sarup of the fall, Jiva, when he falls from the spiritual world. And he says that of the senses and the mind. Now the presiding deity of the mind is, who is the presiding deity of the mind? It's the moon. So it's very important. Moon is very important. You may know that the people who have got mental disorders, may not be mental disorder, I don't know. When it comes to full moon, they go absolutely loony. They cannot control their senses. They go berserk in full moon day, full moon night, excuse me. There are people like this. It is a very well-known fact. It's not very well-known nowadays. But when I was a child, I remember this was very common, this discussion coming up. When full moon, people go mad in full moon. Because moon has got effect on water, you see. So it's got its reference and influence in the body, which is 75% water. So mind The demigod of the mind is the moon. So it's very important to have moon sign, moon rays, bath, especially with those who have got very high stress in their lives. They must take a bath in moon. Like we bathe in the sunshine, take vitamin D, we make sure we do. Similarly, we must make sure we take bath in the moonshine, enjoying the moonbeams. They're very cooling in the body. They're very, very cooling in the mind. Become very calm. Try doing so. We are very fortunate to live in New Zealand, and but still, where we can see the moon. But again, moon, there's a lot of clouds. What I meant to say is that if there's a very high electricity is surrounding the area, then the moonbeams are distorted. Because they're very subtle, the moonbeams. The electricity, electric currents, they disturb the moonbeams. It doesn't come through. So, Srila Gurudev would always say this, that if you can go somewhere out of the city, especially in India, in cities like Mumbai, Delhi, and all, you just can't have moonshine, enjoy the moonbeams. So I would say, go outside the city, stay in a village. Maharaj said once we were traveling and we saw a village where there was no electricity. Maharaj said, it's so nice. You could just sleep on the terrace, enjoy the moonbeams, enjoy it. So we can also enjoy the same way the moonbeams. Yeah, sometimes we are very fortunate that when there's a full moon, it lights up our room, I'm sure the same way with all of you as well. So enjoy ourselves with the moon. And moonbeams is very important to the body. It has very calming effect. You don't require any medicines to calm your senses. Yeah. The living force, I'm the knowledge, consciousness, which has been, all these points have been very nicely discussed. I wanted to raise just few pointers, as I usually do, because philosophically we are quite sound. All points have been very nicely discussed here. Yeah. So Krishna is the essence of everything. This is what he's saying now, opulence of the absolute. There is his opulence. He is Hare. His attributes and his pastimes are all the same, very attractive. And that attracts like moon. Even Lord Chaitanya is said to be moon, 12 moons. This moon. Nobody says sun, it's a moon. It's very cooling effect. Okay, I'll not take much time. If anyone has any questions for the speakers, our speakers have any questions, they can ask any questions to any devotee pointing out, or any devotees have any questions to any speakers for the realizations, they can do so now. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Okay, thank you very much. Because I think the realizations were very good today. And I'm going to take away those important points which are very nicely covered in the realizations there. So very wonderful. This is the purpose of our discussions here. So I want to congratulate all of you now. Very nice. Thank you. Hare Krishna. So we'll conclude our discussion today. Thank you very much. Jai Shri Gurudev ki Jai.
Jai.
Granth Sahib Srimad Bhāgavatam ki Jai.
Jai.
Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is ki Jai.
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 What